Hi, this is Jonathan Rosenhead, the Jerusalem psychotherapist. This week's Torah and Psychology post for Parshas Mishpatim is going to focus on the very first pasuk that says, "Ve'ela Mishpatim asher tasim lifneihem." That Moshe Rabbeinu was told by Kadosh Baruch Hu to teach the Bnei Yisrael the laws. But the wording of asher tasim lifneihem is interesting. As Rashi points out, that Kadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe that you shouldn't think that it's enough just to teach the Bnei Yisrael 2 or 3 times these laws and that they should understand the basic meaning of the teaching, but rather you should go into depth and teach it to in its entirety, to the point that it's like a laid out table all ready for the Bnei Yisrael to take and digest and to be able to fully understand the depth of the meaning behind these mitzvahs and behind these laws. And the Sifsei Chachamim says that in other places, in most places, the Torah says this you could say equation of how Moshe Rabbeinu is told to teach the Bnei Yisrael the Torah and the laws. It says, "V'daber Bnei Yisrael v'amarta aleihem." There's 2 parts. There's daber and v'amarta. 2 parts, which explains that from that, the Sifsei Chachamim teaches that Moshe Rabbeinu would normally at least teach the Bnei Yisrael 2 times, going over the teaching that was told to him by Kadosh Baruch Hu, in order that they should understand, as we said, the basic level, the basic meaning. But here, it's not enough. The pasuk doesn't say Daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta aleihem. It says asher tasim lifneihem, which means there's a greater level of depth that the Bnei Yisrael should understand. Now, this idea, I think, can relate to the whole field and the complexity of how parents should, and the role of a parent in educating their children, of transmitting ideas and values, and also simply rules, you could say, rules and expectations of the home. This is something which comes up very often in my professional work in therapy, working with teenagers, working with parents. And it can come up many times with just you could say the simple day-to-day life situations of if the teenager doesn't want to wake up in the morning, the parent might feel that they have to wake them up, and they come and tell them to wake up again and again and again. Or in the evening, when the parents expect that their child should come home, the child might want to come back later. The parents have an expectation of what time the child should come back. They set a certain boundary expectation. And then it might be a cycle that goes over itself again and again. They repeat to the child when they expect that the child should come home. The child might listen, might not. It's very inconsistent. And what starts is often a very common cycle, morning and evening, and there are many examples that can be brought of the parents just going on and going back over themselves, repeating the same things, and the dynamic becomes an unhealthy dynamic. And what we see from this week's parsha is 2 different messages that are being told. First of all, in terms of Daber b'nei Yisrael v'amarta aleihem, the normal, you could say, construct and protocol, we could say, instead of teaching and passing on messages and laws and expectations and setting boundaries, we could say, is if you want to transmit a certain value, then there is a minimum, there is a certain need to ensure that the child understands, and the parent's responsibility is certainly to guide and direct and help and hope that and ensure that you want that the child should understand that it's definitely a clear message. But what we're told is 2 or 3 times is enough. There shouldn't be entering into this negative cycle, this vicious cycle of repeating and arguing and it turning into a lecture, turning into a point where you're trying to force the message down the throat of the child to get them to understand. If you're clear and you explain something, as we're told, 2 or 3 times, but no more, you can rely on the fact that the child is listening, hopefully, and is able to understand what you're saying if the message is clear. And then it's up to them, it's up to the child it's their responsibility to be able to process and internalize the message. 2 or 3 times, no more. That's what the Torah is telling us as well, in terms of how to pass on values and teachings. Asher tasim lifneihem, in this week's pasuk, is saying that there's certain times maybe where you need to go into greater depth. You need to go into a greater level of clarity, to make sure, maybe it's because the value is so important, there are certain values that you want to pass down to a child, certain goals and expectations that are intrinsic maybe to the family dynamics and the family, you could say, hashkafa. And sometimes you need to go into greater depth, but the Torah still says, Asher tasim lifneihem. It doesn't say force it down them. It doesn't say that you need to make sure they understand. Asher tasim lifneihem is making sure that the table is set, and it's placed before them. It's still up to the child. It's still their responsibility to go up to the table, to take what they want, to choose what they want, to internalize and to be able to digest in their own way, in their own time. There are values that are so important, and certainly you should go into a greater level maybe of clarity and explanation, but still the responsibility and that's the role of a parent ends at that point, at the point of Asher tasim lifneihem. Then it's up to the child to see. They have to take on the goals and the values and understand and accept the expectations or the rules. But this is where the dynamic and the complexity of the relationship between a parent and a child. The parent has this duty and responsibility and authority to teach and explain, but there is a point where that ends and where the child now has their own role and independence and individuation in how they take on these goals and these values. So it's an important message that we're learning for this week's pasuk, this week's parsha, in terms of teaching and passing on values and the roles that we can, and how we can understand and transmit that to the world of parenting, of parent and child dynamics. And hopefully this will give us, the Torah can give us the clarity to have healthy, productive and loving relationships with our children. Have a good Shabbos and keep well.